I am 26 years old, and I decided to open my own business this year. Moving forward in this post, I should point out that I am from a small town, 1,000 people, in the rural Midwest. Because of this, everyone has some sort of connection with someone. We went to one of the liquor stores in the closest city 30-ish minutes away, small city 8,000 people. When we were grabbing some alcohol for a party, I was looking at the prices and saw how insane the prices were. For a 6-pack of a local beer, we were charged $15. I was thinking about this and figured that I could probably make bank opening a liquor store. Back in February, I was furious about my shitty job and thinking out loud how cool it would be to own my own business to a friend. My friend's mom happened to be the president of the local bank. He told me, "Hey, with the pandemic, the bank has been struggling to find customers to give out loans. Right now, the bank is giving loans for cheap." A couple of weeks later, I went in and met with my friend's mom and pitched my idea with the research I had done on alcohol prices, potential demand, and estimated income. I got the loan, at a fantastic interest rate. I bought a building, which happened to be the former bank, and hired my dad to help me renovate the building. My dad is a general contractor, and he gave me an excellent quote on materials and labor. After working everything out with the distributors, getting the proper licenses, and getting my paperwork I needed for the government, I was ready to open my liquor store in May. I had started taking out ads in the local newspaper advertising my store, and my prices. When I was in talks with my distributors, I learned, even with inflation and everything else, the liquor stores in the city had like an 80% markup. I talked to a local business owner, and he suggested that I have around a 35% to 40% markup. Because of this, I was significantly cheaper than the closest liquor store and had a much wider selection than the gas stations and small local stores nearby. My hometown is near a national forest. As such, we have a ton of people who come up for weekends for recreational activities year-round. My first week, the week before Memorial Weekend, after opening, I had made a $4,000 profit. It was great being my own boss. If someone was rude to me or my girlfriend, "Oh, I'm sorry, you can do your business elsewhere." If someone tells my GF, "Go back to China, you chink bitch," they can pay me 15% more at the register. Did the gang and I run out of alcohol? Time to grab my keys, not car keys, the store keys. My apartment is like 2 blocks away, and go to the store. That's not to say that it wasn't difficult running my own business, especially that my only employee was my GF, and we were both working 6 or 7 10 to 12-hour days a week. I was both manager, accountant, and cashier, but fuck, it's so much nicer knowing I can tell someone to pound sand for being a prick. Couple of weeks after Memorial Day, some old guy walks into my store a couple of minutes after I opened. He seemed friendly enough, but eventually he offered to buy my store. I'm not going to say the amount, but it wouldn't have even covered my principal on the loan. I rejected the proposal outright and refused to negotiate the sum higher. He walked out of my store saying, "Velp, you'll be sorry you rejected that offer." The next month, a guy walked into my store and asked if I was the owner. After saying yes, I was informed that my business was being sued by this random guy I never heard of for libel. After he left, I was freaking out and I decided that I was going to close early. When I got home, I googled the guy, and soon saw a picture of the guy that tried to buy my store. It turns out that that is the guy who owns both of the liquor stores in the nearby city. It also just so happens that he is on city council. With a little bit of further digging, I learned that this city has an ordinance that reads, "Any business institution that does not fulfill the definition of a restaurant, tavern, or liquor dispensary will be excluded from obtaining a license for the sale of alcohol." Later, I discovered that the same guy happens to be the head of the board which approves liquor licenses. I love small town corruption. Either way, I had a major issue. My maternal uncle happens to be a lawyer in a neighboring state. I decided to call him and try to get some legal advice. I talked to him and read the documents that I had been handed/served over the phone, and the research I had done. After receiving all of the information I had read off, I was expecting to get some sort of advice, but instead heard, "Hang on, I got to make a call." And he hung up. I'm freaking out. I was actually about to post my first post to r/legal advice. I'll be honest, I just wanted someone to tell me it was going to be okay, and I didn't need to crawl to this guy on my hands and knees. As I was writing the title, my uncle called back. "Hey op, I just got off the phone with my partner. He agreed that we can take your case pro bono. If you would like to accept, we can discuss at my office tomorrow at 1 o'clock. This is how I learned that my uncle is on the bar in 3 states. So, we meet, and we discuss the case. It turns out that the guy filed the libel suit against my business based on the ads I took out in the local newspapers. He claimed that my ads were targeted to damage his and his business's reputation. There were a few other things that I had no idea what was being referenced, but uncle assured me that we would win this case no problem. 3 weeks later, the case is dismissed, but after my uncle says people like that piece of work will likely try to file another suit against you. If that happens, call me and promise I will help. The next day I get served again, but this time I am the defendant. Not my store, me. I swear to God, I look at the documentation and the only thing that changed was instead of my business's name, mine is listed as the defendant. Same thing happens, 4 weeks later the case is dismissed. Over the next 3 months I was sued just as many times. Before the 5th case's hearing we had a settlement meeting. My uncle, the judge, the guy suing me, his lawyer, a bailiff, and I were sitting in this room. Judge says, "You two have been in court 4 times already, is there any way we could come to an agreement that'll stop this cycle of faulty litigation?" The guy's lawyer says they have an offer and hand it to my uncle who then hands it to me. It essentially read that he'll stop all litigation if I sell my business for about 30% of remaining loan principal. I outright rejected the offer and made a counteroffer. I said, "If you drop this case, I won't sue your ass for harassment." He busts out laughing, "Sue me? With what money? The legal fees alone ought to have drained you. You should be happy I chose to extend this offer and not sue your ass into bankruptcy and buy that shithole from the bank when they foreclose on your dumbass." The judge, the bailiff, and the guy's own lawyer were all looking at him aghast for saying the silent part out loud about the real reason I was getting sued. My uncle straight out said to him, "Oh, I am sorry, apparently you were never told. I have taken all of my nephew's cases pro bono. The only money he has spent on your litigations is gas. And bluntly, sir, I think your outburst has just ensured a suit against you." After that we just left, and I was then informed a few days later the litigation was dropped. Right now, my uncle and I are talking about the future suit against the guy. I want to sue the guy for a very high amount to try and get press attention on this guy and his sketchy actions. Although my uncle warned me that we'll need to be careful because if we set the damages too high it'll look like we're just being vindictive. This suit won't be pro bono, but after getting sued 5 times for free essentially, I am not going to complain. Looking back on this I am so thankful that my friends and family supported the entire way, especially my uncle. Without my uncle I would have absolutely lost my business. Comments where Op has replied. Karen Donner, you're a very good writer. You might want to ask your uncle to have any future actions dismissed with prejudice and your opponent named as a vexatious litigant. That's how this kind of thing is usually handled, not in a suit for harassment, and claims for damages usually come in the form of countersuit that is within the scope of the original litigation. That is by far the more economical option, and courts usually take a pretty dim view of original litigation that directly seeks to punish someone for filing lawsuits, which is a protected right under the US Constitution and almost certainly under your state's constitution as well. Also, stay very close friends with your distributor. That's an easy way to cut your business off at the knees, especially if liquor licensing is handled at the local level. I'm really curious to know what state you are in. I always thought federal law required liquor licenses to be handled by the state, though local jurisdiction is usually allowed over issues like operating hours, etc. Your state also seems to have the most brutally efficient civil justice system I've ever heard of. Usually, the course of litigation you describe would take years, not a few months, even before courts got backed up so badly with COVID. Oop, literally everything was dismissed in hearings before going to court by judges. I'm not exactly sure what the proper legal term is. Still, a couple of weeks of litigation can be hundreds if not thousands of dollars. Update 1. This is a follow-up to a post I made last year. I'll link it at the bottom if you are interested, but the last year I opened a liquor store with my GF, now fiancé, in my hometown. The nearby city had a few liquor stores run by a city councilman who controls who gets liquor licenses in said city. With me being 40 minutes away, he was losing business and offered to buy my store. I refused and instead, he tried to sue me for libel. His attempted for around half a year continued to sue me, my business, or anything else he could until it was thrown out with contempt. Fortunately, I was able to get my lawyer to take the case, pro bono, so I didn't get buried in legal fees as the guy intended. My lawyer and I then began to file suit against the guy. So that's where we left off a while ago. As of now the case is over, and I can talk about it. So, to first explain why I didn't post any updates previously. When I filed the lawsuit, my lawyer was not to post anything about it online. I don't think that this had anything to do with the original post, but what he told me was that if the opposing counsel found a post and was able to link it back to me, they could argue that I was only filing a suit to gain online clout. But now the court case is over so I can now talk to you guys. We filed the complaint about a month after the last case against me was dismissed. What we filed for was multiple accounts of malicious misuse of due process. After filing the complaint, we needed to serve the papers to the guy. Someone, I don't know who, must have told him, because he dodged getting served for multiple weeks. The only reason the process server was able to serve him was because there was a meeting to approve the transfer of a liquor license between 2 businesses in the city. Ironic. He and his lawyers answered the complaint and said everything in the complaint and the summons was a deliberate misrepresentation of the facts. None of the suits filed against me were in any way malicious, but given that the only thing that changed between most of the suits was the named defendant, kind of disproves that. He then went on to say that this current suit was simply a move by me to get revenge on him for trying to protect his business. Pretty much the entire answer was just him saying, "No, you." After that we moved into discovery, which I will talk about in a minute. Through the discovery process, there were a couple of motions for dismissal by the defendant's counsel. 1. The first was just a general, all the facts are wrong, and this is a lawsuit filed in bad faith. This was immediately thrown out by the judge because the 4 suits filed back to back with only the defendant being changed indicate that this was potentially a malicious lawsuit. 2. The second motion was that these weren't malicious because the defendants were different. Effectively, the argument is that if the same defendant, then it would be a malicious suit. But because the defendant kept getting changed from suit to suit, that means that there was a legitimate complaint that they were trying to get solved. Which, technically, would be legal and I would have no standing. However, the judge acknowledged that while the argument is legally sound if you simply look at the wording of the law, it completely violates the spirit that it was written in. And the actions of the defendant only serve to confirm that the previous lawsuits were filed in bad faith. So, then the motion was tossed out of court. 3. Later during discovery, the defendant filed for a venue change. Seems how we filed in my local court, they argued that the local jury would be biased towards me. This was dismissed because they forgot to ask for a jury trial. We were perfectly fine with proceeding with a bench trial, so we didn't ask for a jury. The judge decided then that because they didn't request a jury, a venue change would not offer any significant change in the trial. They used that decision, and some history I have with the same judge, to appeal to the state court to dismiss the case. They refused. So back to discovery. The whole process was extremely slow, and we were still in the middle of discovery when we decided to settle. We had received multiple settlement offers up to that point and rejected all of them. But at the end of November, the defendant decided to fire the manager of one of his businesses. The former manager then decided to turn over some text messages to the court. You see, we requested all communications about the malicious filings from last year that the defendant had made. That included text messages. That showed neither counsel nor the defendant did the proper diligence to comply with discovery. The defense was able to get that text removed from the evidence. While the text might not have been able to be used as evidence if had we proceeded to trial, you can't erase that you hid evidence from the judge's memory. They don't tend to take that well. With this coming to light, and the chicanery that the defendant had been pulling, the judge was just over it at this point. Our lawyers had to meet with the judge, at the very beginning of this month, December, where the defense's counsel was reprimanded. After this, the defendant offered a really big settlement. After my fiancée and I discussed it, we decided to accept the offer. Our wedding is getting close, and frankly, we don't want to deal with court stuff anymore. The whole trial process was still months away, and there wasn't any guarantee that we would have gotten any more money. Unfortunately, it's not the nuclear revenge I and my fiancée, and possibly you, were hoping for. Although the settlement, after I settled the contingency pay for my lawyer, did repay the remainder of my loan, we will have a nice chunk of money left over. Now on to the next story. Story 2. I tried helping a neighbor in need, but invaded my house and asked to move in. Posted about this one friend who was our neighbor. She was fun to talk to, but in small doses, especially when her kids were around. So I am like my dad, who always helped the less fortunate, and I am always helping people. Like when I don't need anything, I give it away to the neighbors, Salvation Army, and in homeless shelters. This friend A and her 3 pushy, aggressive, demanding, needy kids want to eat everything and anything at other people's houses. They will grab anything edible without asking for permission. As giving as I am, I can't tolerate that kind of behavior. These kids also has no respect for anyone and acts like they are entitled to everything. They took advantage of me when I told them that they can't help themselves to things in my house and they need to ask, which was a big mistake because they were over almost every day and asking for money, things to eat or drink, and to come swimming. I started telling them no, and they all screamed bloody murder while the mom looked on and seemed mad that they were denied things. She has money to smoke the most expensive cigarettes and buy alcohol and beers and wines. She could spend some on getting her kids snacks, which she claims the kids wipe out in a day when she does buy it. They moved out a year or so ago and it was such a relief. I saw them from time to time. Last Easter, which is also my close friend's son's birthday, she had a party at a park close by. My husband and I took our little kids there. We stopped by at a coffee shop and I got myself small chai latte. A was there with her kids. We exchanged some pleasantries and the oldest son, 14, tries to hand me a solo cup. I said, "Why are you giving this to me?" He said, "I want some coffee." I said, "It's tea and I am not sharing it because it's a small drink that I was craving." He goes haywire and says, "Didn't you think that I would want some and gotten a bigger drink?" I was pissed and told him even if it was a large drink I would not share with someone so unappreciative. I set my tea down at some time to pick up my daughter. I went to get my cup. It's not close to my side, but it's clear across the table where this 14 years old is standing. I loudly said, "How did my cup get there?" He shrugged, and another lady who I had never met told me that he picked it up and drank some. I was livid and took the cup and drained it on the ground and threw the cup in the trash can. He starts screaming that I could have just given it to him instead. His mother, A, was scowling at me. We just decided to leave, no apologies, nothing. So 3 days ago I get a call from A making small talk, and then she asked me if they can move in with us into our new house with her kids. I told her no, that it won't be a good idea. Then her 14 years old monstrous child comes on to let them to stay at our home till they find a place for them to get. I kept saying no and that I would not be talking to him and to put his mom back on. She put the caller on speaker and the kid just wouldn't shut his mouth, and that how helpful they would be to us. I had to hang up and block their phone number. They also called many of our other friends to ask the same and were told no, they don't help at all and they are burdens to everyone else. They got evicted from their place because they had a filthy apartment and they had mice and roaches. Update 1. Thank you for all the support many of you showed. I couldn't let the family be homeless, and so I called a friend who works for a homeless shelter who work with families with underage kids. They are going to go in the shelter and have room and board, and eventually they will get a 2 connecting bedrooms as it becomes available. They will get breakfast/lunch/dinner with snacks etc. and have to be in by a certain time every night and won't be allowed to come and go as they please after 9 p.m. I believe. The mother will have to get random tests done to make sure she's not using. They will all be required to follow house rules and guidelines, and the mother will have to find a job and save any money the mother earns. They have to save enough for their first and last month rent and deposit. The kids will have school buses pick and dropped off. It's a 6 to 12 month program and will have to be on their best behaviors. That will help them with their behavioral issues. This former friend A has found out it's me who had arranged all this, and she wants to thank me, but I prefer that she just leave us alone and take advantage of this opportunity. She didn't want to move in with her mother because she has rules as well, so I don't know how they will deal with the rules at that shelter. I think I have done my share. Now the ball's in her court if she doesn't want her kids taken away. Update 2. A neighbor who I considered a good friend in my old neighborhood yelled at anyone who parked in front of her house. She was always telling people to move their vehicles. She doesn't have a driveway. I tried my best to understand her dilemma. She got extremely mad at me because I had to tell her granddaughter to learn to mind her own business and that she was disrespectful and too needy. Always asking for things to eat or to buy her things, and her stupid jokes, and that she gossips too much. So when my husband was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer while we were in the midst of moving to our new house, all our family and friends rallied around us to help with the moving. One of my cousins parked in front of her house. He is a police officer, had to complain to her landlord. She screamed at him because she had to park up the street. It made me really mad, so I asked him to bring his extra car and to park it in front of her house when she was at work. She didn't know who the vehicle belonged to, and we occasionally turned it around every few days. That's a petty revenge. Update 3. Last week I got the restraining orders against a so-called friend and her entitled children, 16F, 15M, Part 1. This has been coming a long time. This frenemy A was once my neighbor. She was already renting a house there next to us when we bought our house. We were cleaning up before moving in. She came up to us and introduced herself. After a few pleasantries, she pointed towards our back of our house and said the other owners said we could have all the firewood they left behind, and when can we come get it? Hold on, the owners gave it to us as they were moving several states away. I told her no, we were told it's ours. She said but she needs it. I was miffed, but I called the other owner, Jerry, with whom we had become friends with. He said no way that said that. She then told me that Jerry and his wife B used to let her come swimming anytime she wanted to as they were always traveling. Well, it was J and B who did that, but I don't think we would like that. Later Jerry said no, we never allowed that. Gates were there for a reason, plus security cameras for a reason. Her third askance was if they can have the rolled carpet and a large armoire that she said they left behind. I told her what are you talking about, because the movers just set it there and it was ours. There were no furniture left behind. She sensed we were annoyed and slithered away. Didn't see much of her as we settled in, but we did hear her loud booming voice a lot. Always screaming at her kids that she only got to have every other weekend and holidays. We connected a bit here and there. Her kids are really badly behaved and people just don't like them. I have a bleeding heart and tried to help in every way when I found out their finances. Over time I bought the kids school clothes and fed them occasionally and gave them groceries, but the friend A didn't look for a job when she got the kids more and more. They would knock on our doors asking for everything and very shamelessly. It was awesome when they moved. But they still would come over without notice, and it was like they never left. Her 2 older kids have humongous appetites and they will grab things out of your plates. Or they would eat and then ask you if you were going to finish that, pointing their fingers towards the plate. I set some boundaries to not come over and it did work. Till we saw them at a park on Easter egg hunt. The son D asked me to give him some tea that I had gotten from Dunkin' Small. I said no, they already don't give much and I wanted it, but when I put the cup down to tend to my little girl he grabbed it and drank from it. Pissed me off. We left, but again I told them this friendship is over. Update 4. Continuation. Restraining order. They ignored that part and called to ask if they could move in with us. The son, D, thought he was slick and smooth. I told them no way am I letting them move in with us and not to ask again. Reminded them that this friendship is over and please leave us alone, and that the mother should have been the one asking and not her snot son. 2 months ago it was my birthday and my sister and her family were here. We went to our favorite Mexican restaurant. There was 8 of us. Then I hear a voice I never wanted to hear. It was them saying hi, and then they asked if they can join us. My husband told them we have more people coming and it's a family event. They went to their own table and they stared at us. My sister gave me a nice high-end handbag. The son walks over and asks what Gucci was. Took a while to register that he was trying to say Gucci. He came back to the table and told me that he looked online and the amount of that handbag could have gone towards their deposit and rent, and then he said return it and give us the money. They are living in a homeless shelter. I said it's not my duty to pay for other people. I walked over and told the mother that this is my final warning and to stay away and keep your kids away from us. A few days after that I was getting on the freeway and saw 2 women and a small child by a car that seemed to have broken down. I got off to offer help and realized that it was this frenemy. I was so pissed but relived to see the son wasn't there. I told her I can take them up to McDonald's and get them off the freeway. She said let me wake D up. Damn, he was sleeping in the back seat, didn't see him. But I asked that he sit next to me so I can keep an eye on him. He would have destroyed whatever he could in the back. Then he says, can you buy me 2 meals from McDonald's? I said I am not buying anything for them because I can't afford it. He got pissed and pointed to my purse and said, is that another new handbag? That's when all hell broke loose. I told them to get out of my vehicle after I told him off along with his mother. I still hadn't merged into the freeway. I didn't know that highway patrol had pulled up behind us. I said good because he can help you. That's when I felt an excruciating pain in the back of my forearm. The mother had grabbed my arm to ask me to pretend I was driving their car. She said I will take yours. She broke skin on my arm and left a huge bruise on my arm. The officer walked up and I told him I want them out of my car and showed him my arm. He told them to get out after I told him what had happened. She was arrested for not having a license and she blew the sobriety test. So I filed a restraining orders for them to keep their distance from me. The judge saw the pics of my arm and issued the motion.